Hello everybody and welcome back to Chill Out Esports, and today we're talking about Sentinels. Now, if you don't know who the Sentinels are, they are a Valorant team in the VCT Americas League. They have a pretty storied history in Valorant. They're one of the most popular teams in the entire Valorant community. They haven't been what they once were. They won the very first international tournament in Valorant's history, Masters Iceland, all the way back in 2021. They won that tournament without dropping a map. They looked like the best team in the entire world. And ever since that tournament, it just hasn't been the same. So after 2022, which was a disastrous season for that team, they cut everyone on the roster except for tenz, who was very dominant during the time that they were winning. They brought in a bunch of new players, and so far it hasn't worked. Thankfully, it's still early in the 2023 season. They can turn it around. They're currently 3 games in with a record of 1-2, 1 win, 2 losses. They have about 6 more games left. They can turn it around and they can make playoffs, but it is looking a little dicey for them. Let's see if we can figure out what the problem is. As I said, their current record is 1-2. They won their very first match against 100 Thieves and then haven't been able to pick up a win since then. Granted, they have played 2 very good other teams in Energy, who is known to be one of the better NA teams, maybe even the best NA team, but they're also struggling right now. But their only win is against the Sentinels. And the Sentinels also faced off against a team from Chile in Leviathan. I hope I'm saying that right. I know there's different pronunciations of it, but that's what I'm going to call it for this video because it's easy for me to say. But they faced off against them, and they did lose that one 2-1. They were close. It wasn't a bad showing, but that's what happened. So their current map win-loss record is 3-5. They've lost 2 more maps than they've won. In terms of their current standings, they are 8th in the Americas League. You have to be in placement 6 or above to be able to make playoffs, and then you have to be in the top 3 in those playoffs to be able to make it to the next international tournament, which is going to be taking place in Tokyo. Marved is going to be subbing for tenz for the upcoming Super Week, which is where every team plays, I think it's like 3 matches. But that's a big week, and tenz will not be in it because he currently has COVID and he has a joint infection, and he shouldn't have played the last game, but he did because Marved was not able to participate in that match because of visa issues. They're losing games, they fired their coach, seems like everything's a disaster, right? Well, kind of, but again, it's still early in the season, they can turn around. So let's look at each player's individual stats. Zekin, first off, tops off the stat line. He's been performing very well. He has 157 kills to 124 deaths for a KD ratio of 1.26, 59 assists for a KDA of 1.74. Both those stats highest on the team. Average combat score per map is 260, which is well above everybody else on the entire roster right now. Kills per map is 19.6, deaths per map is 15.5, assists per map 7.3. So he's highest in pretty much every category. Zekin is the only player above 1 for their KD ratio. Everybody else is below, and that's not where you want to be, especially with the roster that they've put together and the amount of money that it probably costed them to put this roster together. Pancata came over from Loud along with Sassy. The idea was you bring in these guys that are world champions. It hasn't quite clicked yet on this new roster for them. Looking at his stats, he has 117 kills to 119 deaths for a KD ratio of 0.98, so he's below. So he has 117 kills to 119 deaths, as I said, 43 assists for a KDA of 1.34. Kills per map is 14.6, that is second highest on the team. Deaths per map 14.8, which is second lowest on the team. Assists per map is 5.3, which is, I think, second last on the team. So he's playing okay. His KD ratio isn't where you want it to be, but it's not bad. He is a controller player, so you're not really looking at him for the kills and for the high-octane kind of gameplay. He's been playing Viper, Astra, and Killjoy. Not the characters that you really expect to be fragging at all that much. But that being said, you still want your players to be over 1 for your KD ratio, because that means that they're losing their trades, they're losing gun battles, and they're not they're not holding sites like they should. Then we get to Saucy, who is also playing controller. They're doing a lot of double controller comps. 112 kills to 128 deaths for a KD ratio of 0.87. 64 assists for a KDA of 1.37. Average combat score of 181. Kills per map an even 14. Deaths per map an even 16. And assists per map an even 8. I love me some even numbers. So Sassy, he hasn't been bad either, but he's been well below 1 on the KD ratio. And yes, he's been playing controller, so you're not looking to him for the kills, but even so, you need him to be performing better than that. Then we get to tenz. Tenz is the big one, and tenz is the one that's been getting the most discussion. And I just gotta say, I think a lot of the fan reaction and a lot of the stuff I've been seeing online about tenz is really disheartening. A lot of people are saying, you know, he sucks, he's terrible, get him off the team, he's fucking garbage at this game. Just like all this stuff, and I'm just like, chill, guys. He shouldn't have been playing the last match. It's an organizational failure that he wasn't able to bench himself and get some rest because he had a joint infection. He was sick. He just got COVID like a day after that match. He had to play because Marv didn't have his visa. And while Marv is a great 6-man to have, and we'll get to Marv later, you have to have your players able to play. The point of the 6-man is so that when one of your main people on your roster can't play or shouldn't play, that you have an option to bring your 6-man in. And they can do that when they needed it. Now they can. Marv will be playing for Super Week in place of tenz, so that tenz can rest up, hopefully heal his joint infection and get over that COVID. It's complete BS that he had to play during that match, and that to me is just a complete failure by the organization. Looking at tenz's stat line, through 8 maps, he has 116 kills, 129 deaths, 32 assists for a KD ratio of 0.89 and a KDA ratio of 1.14. I do understand a lot of the criticism that is thrown at him, and not that his performances are without criticism. He shouldn't have been playing that last time, but he was, and because of that, it was rough. It was a rough match for him. He did not have one good map in the entire 3-game series. Even when they won, he wasn't playing very good. And against Energy, he looked lost. He did not have a good match in that one either. It seemed like Energy just really had a book on Sentinels and just really knew how to shut tenz down. Because of this, we get the stat line that we currently see. The problem is, and why it is fair to criticize tenz's performance, is that he is playing Jett. He's playing the main duelist, the main opping duelist for your team comps. He has played a little bit of Sage, but it hasn't really clicked on that agent for him. So I think staying in those duelist opping roles is a bit better for him, but it just hasn't worked so far. It's bad. It's bad. And I will defend tenz, and I do think he's better than what his stats are currently showing. And I do think that there's just a lot of stuff going on for him that's just really making it hard to focus on Valorant. I mean, his girlfriend has cancer. Kind of tough to focus on playing a video game, even competitively, while, you know, the person that you love, your like fiance, not girlfriend, fiance, that must be terrible thing to like be going through while you're also trying to compete, while the entire spotlight of the Valorant community is just fucking raining down on you, and you can't do anything. and the team's struggling and just nothing's clicking. That is a terrible spot to be in. I feel really bad for him, but at the same time, I understand the general criticism of he has to be better than this. His average combat score per map is 178. His kills per map, 14.5, deaths per map, 16.1, and assists per map of 4. He looked great against 100 Thieves. He had really good maps in that series, but since then he just hasn't found his rhythm. There's a lot of factors, but I do think tenz can bounce back. Then we get to Def, who is acting as their IGL. He IGL'd a bit for XSET, and now he's the main IGL for the Sentinels. He hasn't been great. In terms of stats, he's the lowest on the team in almost everything. He's lowest in kills with 104. He has 134 deaths and 71 assists for a KD ratio of 0.77 and a KDA of 1.3. He has an average combat score per map of 168, kills per map 13, deaths per map 16.7, assists per map 8.8. And it just hasn't clicked yet for Def. He hasn't found the right success. Do they try to find a new IGL when they can? I don't know. Now we can look at their upcoming schedule. The next match that the Sentinels have is this weekend, and that is against Loud. Now, Loud is going to be a very tough opponent for this struggling Sentinels team. But Picata and Sassy, both being former Loud members, maybe they'll be extra motivated to play against their former team. So maybe they steal a win? I don't know. It's hard to expect that. I do expect good performances out of Sassy and Picata, but I just don't see them edging out a win against what is probably the best team, not just in Americas, but in the world. So really hard to say. Then the next opponent after that during Super Week is MIBR, who have looked really good. They are currently sitting fourth with a 2-1 record. It's a winnable game for Sentinels if they find a bit more chemistry and if they're well disciplined and well coached. But that's going to be a tough match as well. Then we have Cloud9. Cloud9 wasn't expected to be as good as they have been. They are currently the top team for the North American teams. They're sitting second in Americas. It might be lightning in the bottle, good start, flash in the pan kind of situation with Cloud9. It might just be a couple of not fluke wins, but just unexpected good wins. Maybe they start to fall off by the time that they get to Sentinels. Then they have Evil Geniuses, who have not been good at all. They've only won against Crew, who are the worst team in the entire Americas and one of the worst teams in the world right now, probably. That is a very winnable game for Sentinels. They should be able to beat EG. If they don't, that's really disappointing, and I'd be kind of shocked. And then they have Crew, who, as I said, is the worst team in the Americas right now, have not won a single game. They've only won 2 maps out of their 3 games. So that one should be an easy win for a Sentinels team that is quite talented, but hey, upsets happen, especially Crew against Sentinels back in 2021, where they kicked them out of champions. And then they have Furia, who is tied with MIBR for the second best Brazilian team. They've looked pretty good, so that's also another really tough match for Sentinels, but that is their very last one. We'll know for sure if they're in playoffs or not by the time that match comes around, unless that's the one that decides on their fate. It's not a terribly intimidating schedule, but the fact that they've started with this 1-2 record, not looking great, it is tougher because of that. There's no excuse for the rest of their schedule after that Loud match, because the rest of the teams they should be able to beat. Should being the key word. So they fired their head coach Psycho on April 16th. That was 2 days ago at the time of recording. I feel really bad for Psycho. I think it was just a completely knee-jerk decision that was based off of 3 matches, one of which they won. I don't think that is how you should run an esports org at all, but that's a very common trend in not just Valorant, but just esports in general, especially North American esports. Orgs are impatient as hell. Players get cut like that. Players get dropped like that. Players get benched like that. It happens all the time, and coaches apparently have the same amount of bad luck. Psycho's a good coach. He proved that with XSET. He proved that he could get the most out of a roster that people didn't really expect to go as far as they did and perform as well as they did. Kaplan, who's the replacement, he had a little press release video on the Sentinels Twitter today, and he's saying all the right things. He's saying he wants this team to play discipline. He's saying he wants this team to play smart, and he's confident that they can take down Loud and MIBR. Maybe it's blessing in disguise, but we will see. As I said, Marved is subbing in for tenz. It also leaves the question of, if they start performing really well with Marved, do they have tenz as the 6th man and just play Marved? Marved generally is a controller player, and he's one of the best in the world at that. He proved that last year, was very good for Optic. If you're subbing in him for tenz, that means you're losing your Jet role. It's debatable how important that role is, but a lot of teams have been running with Jet and have been doing really good. It is an important role when it's effective, and tenz hasn't been effective at it, so it won't be a huge loss for them, at least not right in the moment. Their comp is going to have to change because of it. Marv is a very skilled player, but does he fit in well with the construction of the team? I don't know if he does yet. Maybe they keep Zekken on Duelist for a bit, maybe not Jet, but just on Duelist, and they have Marv play controller, then him and Pagata play it, put Saucy on Initiator, same with Def. But when tenz is healthy, do you bring him back? That's the big question. Or does he just take a break to help Kaide through her cancer treatment and all that stuff. Like, will he want to come back with everything going on in his life? So a lot of questions surrounding this team. I do think that the talent pool on this team is very deep. I just don't think they've found the chemistry that they need to be a dominant team yet. It's a short season, so you don't have a lot of time to find that chemistry, but you need to give it time. You need to give these players room to grow, room to improve, room to build chemistry and relationships with each other. So I do think they can turn their season around. I think they will make playoffs. I don't know if they end up top 3. I still struggle to see any team beating Loud. So do they make Tokyo? I don't know. It's looking rough, but it's not impossible. And I think Sentinels fans need to calm down a bit right now, give the roster a bit more time. Guess we'll just have to wait and see. I think after Super Week we will know where this team is at and how good they really are and if they can turn it around. So anyways, that's it. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate you guys. Please subscribe and like this video, and I'll talk to you in the next one. See ya.